Discover how a single dad CEO transformed a paralyzed girl's blind date joke into an amazing laugh. Jake felt the weight of the world as he sat across from his daughter, Lily, at their kitchen table. The light from the window spilled in, illuminating the remnants of their shared dinner, but the warmth didn't reach him. "Dad," she began, her voice playful yet tinged with frustration, "if I had $1 for every time someone judged me for my chair instead of my charm, I'd buy a better one." Her humor broke through the tension he held inside, but the ache in her words tightened his chest. It wiped away the unspoken fears of projecting inadequacy and the struggles she battled daily. He pinched the bridge of his nose, weighing the relentless demands of his tech startup against the joy of being a father to Lily, who was fiercely spirited despite her challenges. As a CEO, he was expected to be decisive and relentless, traits that clashed with the soothing wisdom he tried to impart to his daughter. Every pitch meeting swirled in his mind, skeptical investors dismissing his vision of an app that would empower children with disabilities to forge authentic connections. The echo of their doubts haunted him. Do people really care to connect with disabled kids? Lily had an uncanny ability to unearth laughter in the darkest corners of pain, but tonight, her eyes held something deeper, an unfiltered need for acceptance. "I wish people would see me, not the chair," she whispered, and in that moment, Jake felt his resolve fracturing. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. As he watched her struggle against the weight of societal judgments, Jake's heart raced with determination. The stakes felt insurmountable. He was not just competing to save his startup. He was fighting for Lily's dignity in a world that often overlooked her. Every rejection, every flippant remark from investors beckoned shadows of self-doubt. What if he failed at both his company and as a father? The pressure mounted. As he prepped for a crucial meeting, the tension was palpable. Shoulders tense and mind racing, he remembered his father's words, "Integrity matters more than profit." How could he balance that with the growing urgent financial demands of his business? The fear gripped him tighter. What if the vision he had for Lily and others like her remained just that, a dream? When his pitch didn't just falter but teetered on farce, Jake left the boardroom feeling an unbearable weight, the echo of the investor's disdain still fresh. Every step home felt heavy, the futility of it all wrapping around him like a thick fog. He arrived, half expecting to find his vivacious daughter, but instead saw the unmistakable flicker of disappointment in her eyes. They finally sat down together, their worlds colliding in that intimate space, filled with their shared fears and urgent dreams swirling. Little did he know tragedy was just around the corner, ready to build an insatiable tension that might break them both. Would they rise against the odds, or be crushed under the weight of it all? He could feel storm clouds brewing, and a simple misstep could unravel everything they believed in. The days that followed were shrouded in uncertainty. Jake attempted to focus on his work, the hard edges of his desk granting him little comfort. He stared at the lines of code in front of him, but the characters swam like abstract art, their meanings lost. Each keystroke felt like a reminder of impending failure, the face of the investor swirling in his mind, laughter mocking his aspirations. Yet, it was Lily's face that held him captive by the unyielding bond of love and responsibility. Despite his blueprints for an app aimed at reforming the way children with disabilities interact, self-doubt clawed at him like an uninvited guest. "Do you believe in my idea, Lily?" he had asked one evening, his voice trembling with vulnerability. She nodded, her bright ego clashing against the emotions that lashed within him. "I do, Dad. The world needs to see how fun connections can be, and that includes everyone, whether they're in a chair or out of one." Her conviction sparked a flicker of hope in him. But with each attempt to rework the pitch, he wrestled with soft whispers of doubt. How would you convince the world if you couldn't even convince yourself? One evening, in a desperate bid to revive both his confidence and his concept, Jake took to the streets armed with his tablet. He actually sought feedback from children at a local community center, those who needed his fears into tangible forms. Through their laughter and stories, he discovered incredible insights about their needs and experiences that textbooks never captured. Each interaction carved a little more clarity into his vision, igniting a burgeoning sense of purpose. Why would I interact with others? A shy boy with glasses, Oliver, asked him. It's not like they understand me. The ache in his earnestness wrapped around Jake's heart tightly. What if they could? He replied, the vision of his app crystallizing further. Suddenly it transformed from a mere business venture into a mission. Returning home, feeling lighter yet heavier, he confronted Lily with his new vision. What if the app does more than connect? What if it teaches others to understand? As he unveiled his thoughts, he noticed her brightening fervor mirroring his own. Together, they brainstormed features and ideas, channeling their worries into something constructive. They were a formidable team, a father elevating his daughter, and a daughter infusing her father with vigor. Yet, lurking in the background was the investor scheduled for their final meeting. This wasn't just about financial backing anymore, this was a critical test of integrity against the rather shallow world of profit hunting. Jake wrestled with the moral implications swirling around him. Yet every time doubt threatened to drown him, the conversations with Lily reclaimed his resolve. Days slipped into nights, filled with relentless preparation. Jake envisioned those faces in the community center. He pictured Oliver and others like him, peering at a screen, their eyes lit with connection rather than isolation. The moment of truth was approaching, but with it came the fear that if he didn't succeed, he risked failing not just as a CEO, but as a father who promised to fight for his daughter's dignity. As he stepped into the meeting room, his heart pounded furiously against the confines of his chest, the tension palpable in the air. Faces flickered between anticipation and skepticism. Suddenly he felt the weight of a million expectations anchor him. But what if the moment of confrontation revealed more than just a financial decision? Would it confirm his worst fears, or would it set the stage for something transformative? The very essence of his journey hinged on this moment. The room swelled with silence as Jake took a deep breath, the air thick with uncertainty. He glanced at the investor, Marcus, whose steely gaze seemed to dissect every inch of Jake's resolve. "Thank you for having me," he began, voice steadier than he felt. "I believe we're on the cusp of something groundbreaking." As he outlined the features of the app, Jake's focus glided between the projected slides and the faces around the table, each expression a riddle he needed to decipher. He showcased user-friendly designs aimed at bridging gaps between children with disabilities and their peers. Yet even as he articulated his vision, a relentless whisper of self-doubt lingered at the edges of his consciousness. Would they see the value he saw? While the heart of the product feels compelling, Marcus interjected, his brow creased with skepticism. What's the profit margin? Investors like numbers, Jake. We want guarantees. The words stung like a slap, momentarily rattling the confidence Jake had painstakingly built up. Taking an unsteady breath, Jake recalled Oliver's wide-eyed innocence. "This isn't just about profit," he replied, the passion blossoming within him. "It's about changing narratives, creating empathy. It's not a quick win. It's an investment in a future where every child feels included." For a brief moment, he thought he saw a flicker of interest break through Marcus's veneer. Jake pressed on, detached from the urgency pressing against his chest. Imagine children learning to communicate beyond screens, to understand each other's worlds. The app could facilitate interactions that prevent isolation and foster friendships. As he spoke, memories of his interactions with Lily surfaced, each dewy-eyed affirmation reinforcing his resolve. The investor leaned back, arms crossed tightly, as if the weight of the world rested on his shoulders. "Interesting, but does understanding equate to revenue?" Marcus's tone was calculating, drawing Jake back to a harsh reality, a world where morality and business often collided in the most brutal way. For a moment, doubt crept back in. What if he was fighting a battle against insurmountable odds? What if all the love he poured into this dream had no place in the cutthroat corporate world? And then he thought of Lily, her laughter ringing through his memories, illuminating the shadows. "My goal isn't just to make money. It's to make a difference, he asserted, his voice rising to meet the challenge. If we can create a platform that fosters true understanding, we will have an impact that goes beyond financial statements. Isn't that worth investing in? In that moment, Marcus's expression softened, if only for an instant. Jake seized the opportunity, pressing forward with renewed vigor. Consider the social impact. Schools could implement it as part of their curriculum, leading to partnerships that extend beyond classrooms and into homes. His heart raced as he painted a picture where compassion underpinned every line of code. But just as Jake thought he had captured their attention, Marcus's smirk returned. And how will you sustain this passion project? How will you prove it can scale? The disbelief threaded through his words cut deeper, amplifying the internal conflict that had been brewing within Jake. The moment pressed on him like a vice. Was there a way to marry the mission with profitability? It wasn't just a business. It was his dream and Lily's future. Could he divert Marcus's skepticism towards possibility instead of dismissal? As the meeting progressed, armed with quick repartees and bolstered conviction, Jake felt a change in the room's energy. Dialogues transitioned from rigid confrontations to a collaborative exploration of ideas. But lurking in his mind was the echo of Marcus's final question. How could he align his vision with the cold calculations of investors? Jake's pulse quickened, feeling the clash of ideals and the burgeoning resolve to not lose himself in the quest for numbers. He left the meeting with more than he had expected, seeds of insight intertwining with anxiety that now bloomed into possibilities. Outside the office, the bright chill of the evening air embraced him, awakening new purpose as fresh ideas took root. Yet a formidable challenge loomed in a world that often commodified dreams. Could he navigate the landscape without compromising his values? He had avoided the question long enough, but now it pressed against him, demanding an answer. Standing at the threshold of an uncertain future, Jake prepared to confront the inevitable reality he had been sidestepping. What would he be willing to sacrifice in pursuit of this transformative vision? Jake trudged home under the weight of the evening's discussions. The vibrant lights of the city sparkled around him, contrasting sharply with the tumult roiling in his mind. Each step forced him to grapple with the myriad thoughts tumbling through his head. Could he really convince investors that his vision was worth their faith and funding? Or was he simply chasing an impossible dream? As he entered his modest apartment, the silence wrapped around him, thick and suffocating. His eyes drifted to the little corner where Oliver's toys lay, scattered remnants of innocence that grounded him. Sitting on the couch, he allowed himself a moment of vulnerability. If the world of investors was a battlefield he had to navigate, then he needed weapons sharper than mere statistics. He needed relationships. Jake thought of Lily, the girl who had unknowingly inspired him, and her father's words from earlier that day. It's all about the connections we build, he recalled, echoing the wisdom that had initially galvanized him into action. It was time to expand beyond the confines of conventional pitches and assessments. What if he could engage potential investors on an emotional level, entwining their interests with the heartfelt mission behind his app? The next day, Jake returned to his workspace, revitalized, mapping out a plan. First, he would gather stories. Real stories of children like Lily who had faced isolation yet found connection through creative means, stories of transformation that could pull at heartstrings and open wallets. He would craft a narrative that combined his passion for technology with genuine human experiences. Armed with his laptop, he delved into research, seeking out both case studies and personal accounts. Each research session filled him with validation as he unearthed instances where technology acted as a bridge in overcoming limitations. These stories fueled his determination. They were not just statistics, they were lives changed. As Jake compiled these narratives, he also reached out to schools and organizations that supported children with disabilities. He brought them into the fold, inviting collaboration for feedback that could further refine his app. Every phone call and meeting ignited a flicker of excitement. Inviting others to join his vision only strengthened his resolve. He wasn't alone anymore, he was part of something larger. During a lunch meeting with a local educator, a breakthrough occurred. Why not turn this into an experience? Engage kids in the development process, let them give feedback on designs. Get them invested in their own inclusion, she said, her eyes sparkling with inspiration. Jake felt a jolt of adrenaline at the thought. An app co-created by the very users it sought to help could provide them with ownership, a sense of agency, and be a perfect narrative for his pitch. Suddenly, everything else took a back seat to this direction. He realized the synergy between mission and business viability. The emotional engagement with both users and investors could transform their perspectives. Sensing urgency, he quickly convened a brainstorming session with his team. Ideas flew back and forth as they mapped out strategies to harness user experiences to attract investor interest. Yet, as the enthusiasm surged, an unsettling thought crept back, and would Marcus and his colleagues appreciate this approach? Moments of doubt surfaced sporadically, threatening to unravel the new tapestry he was so carefully weaving. Still, the realization dawned that investing was not just about dollars. It was about vision, about shared values. He had to believe that if he laid his heart bare, perhaps they would. 2.as days slipped into nights. The metamorphosis of his project transitioned from a merely functional app to a living, breathing venture aimed at inclusivity. Jake embraced the challenge, knowing that the window for action was narrowing. He only had so long before the next investor meeting, and he needed to arrive armed not only with numbers but with a story that would resonate. As he settled into his work, each pounding key felt like the intersection of effort and hope. But amidst the growing optimism, another ominous question loomed. If emotions could unite people, then what awaited him when personal feelings collided with the unforgiving landscape of business? The answer hovered just out of reach, creating a tension that surged within him as he prepared to unveil not just his idea but himself. What would be the cost of unveiling his heart in a room where cold calculations often triumphed? The time had come to face the investor's rationality with something deeply personal. But was he prepared for the consequences that might follow? Jake spent the next few days diving headfirst into his new strategy, fueled by a blend of excitement and anxiety. Every moment felt like a ticking clock counting down to the investor meeting, a time when he would need to be at his most convincing. The narratives he had gathered transformed his mindset. Instead of viewing the investors as cold-hearted financiers, he began seeing them as potential allies who could believe in a cause larger than monetary gain. The preparation was relentless. Each evening he immersed himself in refining stories, crafting a compelling narrative that fused the essence of connection and technology. He had reached out to schools and families, gathering more testimonials, their voices becoming part of the symphony that would form his pitch. It wasn't merely an app anymore, it was a lifeline, a path to inclusion for children like Lily. Yet a swell of apprehension lingered, waiting for its moment to surface. Jake found himself questioning the viability of his approach. Could a story truly sway the minds of logical investors accustomed to cold metrics? After all, he had witnessed people get consumed by numbers before, drawn into a world where emotion ran secondary to profit. Amidst the hustle, Jake confronted a moment of clarity. He remembered the laughter shared with Oliver, the times when creativity blossomed from simplicity. He realized he needed to preserve that essence when presenting, bring authenticity to the narrative instead of merely reciting facts. It was a revelation, not just for the pitch but for Jake himself. He was not just a CEO trying to secure funds, he was a father, a storyteller, a creator driven by love and necessity. As he honed his presentation, Jake practiced in front of his mirror, his reflection absorbing his conviction. Each rehearsal deepened his commitment, transforming anxiety into anticipation. Then came an unexpected moment of inspiration. While reflecting on Lily's story, he found an analogy that resonated deeply: the concept of a bridge between two shores, representing the app's potential to connect children with disabilities to their peers, breaking down the walls of isolation. The night before the meeting, he could hardly sleep, his mind replaying the potential outcomes: success, failure, or something in between. He visualized the room filled with investors, their skeptical faces, and yet, somewhere in him, the hope stained with doubt flickered like an ember, urging him to remain focused on the mission. Jake thought about how much this app meant to him as a father. It wasn't merely a business venture. It was a chance to ignite change and provide opportunities. That realization galvanized his spirit. People often talk about the weight of responsibility, yet here he was, lifting that weight with purpose. Morning arrived, and he dressed with intention, donning his best suit not just for appearances but as an armor against his trepidation. He took a moment to breathe deeply, grounding himself in the purpose behind his work, a promise for tomorrow, for children like Oliver and Lily. As he engaged in small talk with other entrepreneurs at the networking event before his pitch, he began to see connections forming. These were not mere contacts, but individuals who resonated with his vision. An unexpected encounter with an investor who had personal ties to disability advocacy shifted his focus. Jake shared Lily's story in a casual conversation, observing how her struggle echoed with an emotional depth that seemed to resonate. Yet as he moved to finalize his thoughts for the pitch, doubts slithered back into his mind. What would he do if his emotional appeal faced counterarguments? Could he remain grounded if questioned about his business acumen? Doubts loomed, creating a storm within, yet determination replaced trepidation as the moment approached. He was ready to confront the fusion of emotion and business head-on, fully aware that revealing his heart could challenge both the investors and himself in ways he hadn't anticipated. Would they embrace vulnerability, or would Jake find himself standing at the precipice of rejection? He stepped forward, knowing the stakes were towering. The moment of truth approached, carrying the weight of a father's promise and a founder's resolve. The door to the meeting room loomed ahead. Stepping through would determine not just the future of an app but the essence of who he was prepared to become. What awaited him on the other side? Jake stepped into the meeting room, the scent of polished wood and fresh coffee swirling around him. The investors sat at a long rectangular table, each face a blend of curiosity and skepticism. His heart raced, a primal instinct clamoring for escape, while his mind raced through rehearsed lines. With a steadying breath, he targeted the center of the group. "Thank you all for being here today," he began, his voice steady but soft, aware of the weight of his words. "I want to share a story. It starts with my daughter, Lily." As he recounted Lily's experiences, the isolation, the misunderstandings, he watched their expressions. Some leaned in, their attention piqued. He unveiled the details of the app, illustrating its functionalities and seamlessly integrating statistics to support his vision. Yet, he kept the emotion palpable, connecting facts with the feelings that fueled his drive. This was not just data, it was a lifeline, a connection awaiting to form. He felt their scrutiny, and his confidence threatened to flicker under the weight of their analytical gazes. Doubt erupted like a tempest in his chest. Would they understand the earnestness behind the metrics? Yet, he pressed on, using the analogy of the bridge. He could see glimmers of understanding in their eyes, a faint acknowledgement that perhaps a bridge was worth building. One investor, a woman with piercing blue eyes, raised a hand. "I appreciate the emotional appeal, Jake, but how do you ensure scalability? Emotion is compelling, but we need to think about profits and sustainability as well." Her skepticism was sharp. The question stung, slicing through the warmth of his narrative like a cold wind. He forced a smile, fighting the urge to retreat into stammering excuses. This was the moment he feared. He could either retreat into a defensive stance or rise to the challenge. Jake set his jaw, allowing determination to reign. "That's a valid concern," he stated, grounding his response in confidence. "Emotional narratives are indeed powerful, but they drive a market shift. By enabling children like Lily to interact and communicate, we're tapping into a largely overlooked demographics of both users and stakeholders. While the metrics are important, they stem from genuine community engagement." The investors exchanged glances, considering his rebuttal. Their skepticism didn't waver entirely, but he was no longer just a father sharing a daughter's story. He was a leader advocating for an innovative solution. As he wrapped up his presentation, he opened the floor for questions. Skepticism loomed like a storm cloud, but so did opportunity. One investor posed a query about potential partnerships that could enhance credibility and outreach. Jake answered, outlining proposals that had already formed. Each reply felt like a brushstroke painting a clearer picture. But then another voice chimed in from the far end of the table. "Tell us, Jake, what will you do if this fails? If everything collapses, what is your backup plan? The room held its breath at the probing challenge. Anxiety surged, but Jake was ready. Failure is a teacher, and if I fall, I will learn what didn't work, reassess, and try again. Lily deserves that commitment. I owe it to her and every child battling these barriers. This was more than a strategic defense, it was a fierce declaration of his purpose. He felt the shift, a crack in the armor of their skepticism. As the meeting progressed, lingering doubts gave way to an undercurrent of intrigue. Yet the weight of uncertainty still hung heavy as they prepared to conclude. Thank you for your time today, Jake, one investor said, leaning back thoughtfully. We'll be in touch. I see passion, but also potential for further refinement. Jake's heart skittered. Passion didn't guarantee success, but it had opened doors he had not imagined. He stood to leave but hesitated, sensing unfinished business. Would the next steps be met with favor or disdain? Did he convey enough of his vision to spark their intrigue? Jake's internal conflict raged as he exited the room, every unanswered question leaving a mark on his resolve. As he walked away, a fire ignited within him. He would not only await their response but also seek to enhance his vision further. Growth was imminent, both for him professionally and personally. As challenges mounted ahead, would he find the resilience to face what came next, or would his fears consume him? Jake stepped into his dimly lit office, the weight of the meeting still clinging to him. The sterile, minimalist environment should have felt comforting, yet it suffocated him with reminders of his unresolved uncertainties. He sank into the chair, running a hand over his face as if trying to wipe away the tension. The question about failure echoed in his mind, haunting him like a specter. What if this journey faltered? What exactly would that mean for him and for Lily? He pulled out his notebook, ink smeared on the pages, filled with notes and sketches of his thoughts, dreams, and plans. But today, it felt heavy, encumbered by the fear of inadequacy. What could he innovate if the investors didn't see the potential? The realization crashed over him. He needed to do more than just get by on passion. He had to refine his vision into a more concrete narrative. Closing his eyes, he focused on Lily's face, the way her eyes sparked when she spoke about her dreams. It rekindled his determination to push through the doubt. This was not merely a business, it was a mission. The instinct to protect that mission ignited a force deep within him. This step behind the desk wouldn't break him. He would refine this concept until it shined like a beacon. That night, he dove into research. Hours crumbled away as he jotted down ideas for marketing strategies, potential partnerships, and technology advancements. With each stroke of the pen, his vision crystallized, blooming into a robust outline of what the app could achieve. It was no longer just a tool for communication. It could transform lives, a bridge to understanding and compassion in a diverse world. However, as the sun climbed higher the next morning, trepidation seeped back into his heart. As he re-entered that realm of investors, armed with new ideas and strategies, what if he was met with the same cold skepticism? His throat tightened at the thought. To silence that voice, he resolved to craft a comprehensive and engaging pitch that didn't shy away from addressing their concerns. In the days that followed, he practiced relentlessly, molding his presentation with the precision of a sculptor. He rehearsed in front of the mirror, immersed himself in feedback from friends, and studied successful pitches online. Jake transformed from a tentative dreamer into a prepared leader. His narrative wouldn't just address the emotional appeal, it would encompass tangible data reflecting growth, user engagement, and market potential. Each moment spent preparing solidified the anchor of his vision. He designed visuals that integrated statistics alongside emotional anecdotes. Reviews from his peers ignited a new brightness in his demeanor. Confidence became his armor, fortifying him against potential rejection. As he fine-tuned his proposal, a strange blend of excitement and anxiety filled the air around him. Yet doubt still tugged at his thoughts at twilight, whispering reminders of past failures, of moments where he faltered. But Jake confronted those shadows, reflecting on how much he had already achieved. Then, a late-night text jolted him. One of the investors from the last meeting asked for a follow-up meeting. Jake's heart raced. Was this the opportunity he had prepared for? Would they see the potential for something remarkable, something that could truly change lives? As anticipation surged, he knew. Whether or not this latest endeavor succeeded mattered less than how he had already evolved. With renewed purpose pulsing through him, he considered the stakes. This wasn't merely about an app. It was about courage, failure, and the resolve to rise again. However, as he settled into bed, a haunting thought lingered. If he succeeded, could he keep up with the demands of an expanded vision? With the night stretching before him, he took one last deep breath, bravery igniting that uncertainty anew. Tomorrow would bring clarity and perhaps a turning point. Would he emerge triumphant, or would doubts once again rise to the surface, testing his resolve in ways he hadn't anticipated? As dawn broke, golden light snuck through the blinds of Jake's office, illuminating the clutter of his thoughts scattered across notebooks and sticky notes. The clock ticked ominously, each second fueling the urgency of his impending meeting. Today was no ordinary day. It was a defining moment that could elevate his whole existence, or plunge him back into the depths of self-doubt he was starting to conquer. He spent the morning in furious preparation, reciting his pitch more times than he could count, adjusting words and inflections like a musician tuning an instrument. Each word was a note, and he envisioned himself composing a symphony that would resonate with the investors. He had to ensure they heard both the data and the passion, the same fervor that sparked his initial idea. As he stepped into the meeting room, Jake felt that familiar combination of exhilaration and dread. The investors sat behind a long table, their expressions neutral, but he detected the glimmer of skepticism behind their eyes. He cleared his throat, the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. His heart raced, but he reminded himself that he wasn't just selling an app. He was beckoning them into a vision he firmly believed could reshape lives. "Thank you for having me," he began, his voice steady, still nervous but firm. As he transitioned from one slide to the next, the room began to change. His passion breathed life into his projections. The numbers transformed from cold data into possibilities, painting a picture of success that was vibrant and attainable. With every statistic he presented, Jake felt himself shedding layers of self-doubt. However, halfway through, one of the investors raised his hand, a challenge punctuating the air. "That's an inspiring vision, Jake, but how do you plan to differentiate your app in such a saturated market?" A wave of uncertainty threatened to crash over him. For a fleeting moment, he hesitated, but he put forth his well-rehearsed response, fortified by the countless hours spent identifying competitive advantages. He spoke of unique algorithms, user experience enhancements, and potential collaborations. The more he spoke, the clearer his ideas became. It was as if each answer not only addressed their doubts, but also reinforced his belief in the mission. Just when he felt a sense of momentum build, another investor interrupted. "What if you fail? What is the backup plan?" As they posed the question, Jake momentarily froze. It wasn't just their inquiry. It was his own inner voice echoing back at him. He had wrestled with this question in sleepless nights, but, instead of succumbing to the fear, something shifted within him. He leaned forward, tapping into a well of personal understanding. Failure is part of any journey. What defines us is how we respond. If this app doesn't succeed, I learn, I adapt. I grow. This experience is part of my evolution, and ultimately it's a stepping stone towards something greater. The air thickened as silence enveloped the room. In that moment, Jake felt an unfamiliar surge of resilience. They weren't just investors. They were potential partners in a mission that reached far beyond profit margins. His invigorated confidence shifted the energy, igniting interest where skepticism had previously lingered. By the end of the meeting, Jake found himself with more than just their interest. He had sparked curiosity and engagement, opening the door for deeper conversations. As the discussions wrapped up, there was a palpable excitement in the air. They asked for a final version of his plan, deadlines, and potential milestones. Stepping out of the conference room, he was enveloped by a rush of adrenaline. Success wasn't guaranteed, but he felt something profound had shifted. The voice of doubt had dulled, and in its place was a newfound understanding of his power to persevere. Yet, As the day waned and he reflected on the meeting, a chilling thought emerged. Was he truly prepared for the scrutiny that would follow? And even more importantly, could he handle the stakes if this did take off? With his heart positioned precariously between hope and trepidation, Jake set aside the questions. The path to transformation had begun, but it was clear that the next challenge wouldn't be far behind, one that would demand an inner strength he wasn't entirely sure he possessed yet. The following days became a whirlwind of activity and self-examination for Jake. The investor's potential interest acted like a double-edged sword, spurring momentum while simultaneously intensifying his fear of inadequacy. Each morning, he awoke to a palpitating heart, caught between the thrill of possibility and the dread of exposure. As meetings with his team became more frequent, he struggled to maintain a facade of confidence. Jake pored over the feedback from the investors, dissecting their remarks as if they were a puzzle requiring a solution. He spent long nights in the office, not just refining his presentation, but rummaging through his life experiences in search of what could fuel his vision. Every anecdote, every lesson learned surfaced like hidden gems. He realized he hadn't just been building an app, he was cultivating a tapestry of convictions drawn from the cornerstones of his life. Yet, in the midst of this growth, shadows loomed. The looming date for further discussions tightened the grip of anxiety around him. He felt as though he were teetering at the edge of a precipice, and with every day that passed, he feared the slip that would leave him falling into irretrievable failure. A pivotal opportunity lay in front of him, yet the prospect of potential fallout clung to his thoughts like a fog he couldn't shake. During a casual dinner with his daughter, Mia, a biting reflection emerged. As they laughed over pizza, she casually remarked, "Dad, what if you just do your best and don't think too much about it? That's what I do during my school plays." The simplicity of her words struck him harder than he expected. Not only had she captured his current struggle, but she also reminded him of the joys hidden within the chaos. The innocent enthusiasm with which she approached challenges was a lesson he had overlooked. That night, sitting alone in his office, Jake pondered her words. It was time to shift the narrative. He didn't merely want to survive this venture, he wanted to thrive in it. Stepping beyond the fraught boundaries of self-doubt called for courage, but ultimately, it demanded authenticity, a commitment to share not only his vision, but who he truly was beyond the metrics and projections. He returned to his presentation, stripping away the excess layers. Instead of focusing solely on revenues and user engagement, he infused his history, his values, and his motivations into the narrative, creating an emotional tapestry woven with honesty. This shift began to illuminate the path forward, transforming his fear into a source of inspiration rather than a limitation. As Jake prepared for the next round of discussions, he found himself less focused on the approval of the investors and more immersed in the genuine impact his app could have. What had once ruled him, the weight of expectation, now served as fuel, propelling him towards sharing not just a product, but a mission born from vulnerability created by his life's nuances. The meeting day arrived, and for the first time, Jake entered the room with a sense of purpose that transcended his startup's success. He felt more like an advocate for change than a mere businessman, using his journey to guide others towards similar growth. Yet just as he was feeling this sense of alignment, a nagging sensation crept back, and had he truly prepared enough, or had he introduced an element of risk that could unravel everything? The moment of truth was approaching, and as the investors filed in, the weight of their scrutiny bore down on him again. Jake reminded himself of Mia's authenticity and pushed through the door, ready to embrace the power of his story amid the looming uncertainty. But doubts lingered, and he couldn't shake the question, would this newfound honesty resonate? Or had he crossed an invisible line that could cost him dearly? Jake stood outside the glossy doors of the boardroom, his heart thumping a steady rhythm that echoed his resolve. Today was different. With each investor seated before him, he carried not just an app but a purpose and evolution that connected his professional ambitions to his role as a father raising a daughter like Lily. He inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of their anticipatory gazes. Dismissing the impulse to retreat, he stepped forward, drawing from the core of experience that had shaped him over the last few months. "Thank you for being here today," he began, his voice steady. "I want to share not just an idea, but a vision shaped by my daughter, Lily. She taught me how essential it is to foster connections that transcend disabilities. As he spoke, weaving her story with the expansive goals of the app, he saw flickers of interest on their faces. This was more than an elevator pitch. It was a heartfelt mission to transform the landscape of children's engagement, a bridge connecting kids with and without disabilities. The emotional depth propelled Jake as he infused every statistic and plan with anecdotes that reflected their potential impact. Imagine a world, he continued passionately, where kids become advocates for one another, learning empathy through interaction. This app isn't just about connection, it's about collaboration and growth. The room felt charged with potential. Observing progressively engaged expressions in the investors, Jake glanced towards the back where a notable skeptic from the last meeting sat, arms crossed but no longer scowling. He explained not only the user interface but the personal stories of empowerment that would fuel its design. As anticipation swirled with apprehension, one of the investors perked up, offering a question that could either build or break him. How will you maintain this momentum? Will you be able to scale without compromising your vision? Jake straightened his back, the echoes of earlier self-doubt fading as he leaned into a newfound strength. The beauty of this app lies in its community-driven model. Children will participate in its evolution. Schools will provide a platform where they can engage with peers, gather insights, and reflect on their interactions. As their confidence grows, so does our user base. We're not just creating an app, we're partnering with the very community we aim to serve. He noticed heads nodding, their demeanors shifting from skepticism to cautious curiosity. This moment felt pivotal. He wasn't merely pitching a product, he was inviting them to join a movement. But as the questions continued, the specter of fear crept back in. And if it fails? One investor prodded, the question piercing through Jake like a thorn. Failure is part of the journey, he replied, voice unwavering. What matters is resilience. I've learned to pivot and adapt. If this doesn't work, I will reassess, and I want to walk away from the mission. This is about more than profits. It's about paving the way for understanding and growth. That's what I owe to my daughter. The stakes felt immobile, yet in that honesty, clarity broke through the doubt. He gave a final summary, reminding them all of the lives his app aimed to reach and uplift. Each word resonated with conviction, connecting the dots between commercial viability and ethical responsibility. Stepping out into the light of a new day afterward, Jake felt relief wash over him, a weight lifted. He didn't just share a project, he presented a fundamental shift rooted in personal courage. Within moments, his phone buzzed, a message illuminated the screen. The investors wanted to schedule a follow-up meeting. Jake closed his eyes momentarily, savoring the response and allowing hope to blossom fiercely within him. This wasn't merely about the app attaining financial backing, it was a testament to the journey he'd undertaken, a growth unconfined and blossoming like the spring after a long winter. Reflecting on his path, Jake realized the true transformation had occurred within. He had transcended self-doubt, becoming an advocate not just for his daughter but for countless others who longed to connect. The idea that started as a flicker of hope transformed into a mission that brought communities together, teaching empathy and understanding despite different backgrounds. As he embraced this newfound clarity, the road ahead shimmered with promise. No longer just a father or a CEO, he was a pioneer on the path towards inclusivity, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. With newfound confidence, Jake recognized that he didn't only survive the relentless tide of uncertainty. He learned to sail uncharted waters, navigating the interplay of practicality and heart. His set conclusion? He had risen, not just as a father committed to his daughter but as a leader poised to reform the very fabric of interaction for children everywhere. And that, he realized, was the ultimate victory. You need to subscribe now to witness the power of transformation. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Finally, we want to hear your thoughts. Comment below with your reactions and theories about this ending. Let's spark a conversation.